It's estimated that law enforcement across the US investigate up to 16,000 murders every year. Even with experts working on cases around the clock and advancements in DNA technology, solving a murder is no easy task. Sometimes it takes the persistent effort of victims' families to finally put the pieces together. Here are 5 ordinary people who were able to track down a loved one's killer. Number 5. Aaron Fraser was just 3 years old when his mother disappeared in 1993. His parents, Michael and Bonnie Heim, had a tumultuous relationship filled with abuse. Just before she vanished, 23-year-old Bonnie made plans to leave with Aaron while her husband was out of town. Bonnie had been secretly saving money in a separate bank account to start a new life with her young son. In the months before she disappeared, Michael discovered this account and forced her to close it. Still determined to leave the abuse behind them, Bonnie entrusted a friend to set aside money for her that she could access when she found the opportunity to leave. With $1,200 saved, Bonnie put deposits on 2 apartments in early January to ensure that she would have a place to call home by the 23rd, the day that her husband would be leaving on a business trip. On the night of January 6, 1993, Bonnie called a relative saying she had to cancel the plans she'd made with them because she and Michael needed to discuss their marriage. By the afternoon of the 7th, police would be knocking on the door of the Heim home. A maintenance worker had discovered Bonnie's purse in a dumpster at a motel. Her ID, credit cards, and other personal belongings were still inside. Police questioned Michael, who said his wife left the night before after an argument and he assumed that she was visiting friends or family. Because there was no evidence of foul play and Bonnie's body had not been located, Michael was not charged with any crime at the time. Investigators were, however, suspicious and named him as the only suspect in her disappearance. When questioning 3-year-old Aaron, the boy said that his father hurt his mother and that she wouldn't wake up. This led to Aaron being removed from the home when he was 4 and being adopted soon after. In 2004, with the help of his adopted mother, Aaron filed a civil suit against his father for his mother's disappearance. He was awarded the deed to his childhood home, which he rented out over the next decade. On December 14, 2014, Aaron began renovating the home. He started with the pool in the backyard, and while excavating the concrete, a bag was unearthed. Inside the bag was what Aaron originally thought was a coconut, until he saw teeth, and what he had discovered was a human skull. After 23 years of wondering what happened to his mother, Aaron was finally getting answers. A .22 caliber shotgun casing was found with Bonnie's remains. This matched a gun that Michael owned in 1993. The police had taken into evidence in hopes of building a case against him. In 2015, Michael Heim was arrested for the murder of his wife, Bonnie Heim. He was sentenced to life in prison in 2019. Had her son not been awarded the very home that she was trying to escape at the time of her death, it's likely she would have never been discovered and Michael would still be walking free. Number 4. In 2012, Miriam Rodriguez was experiencing a mother's worst nightmare. Her young daughter, Karen, had been abducted in Mexico. With close to 11,000 reported kidnappings in the area over the course of 6 years, Miriam was offered little help in locating her daughter. She took it upon herself to investigate, questioning members of the community and infiltrating gangs around the city. She was able to link members of the Los Zetas cartel to the crime, and the main suspect was arrested. This eventually led to her daughter's remains 2 years later in 2014. Miriam found a group to aid families of missing loved ones and dedicated her life to seeking justice for victims. She worked tirelessly trying to protect her city from the cartel and was a well-respected and important figure in the country at the time. On May 10, 2017, Miriam's crusade came to an end. While at home, she was shot 12 times and killed. The city was devastated by the news, and rumors began circulating that Los Zetas was responsible. It didn't take long for authorities to arrest 3 men in connection with her murder. They await trial as Miriam's friends and family await justice. Number 3. Leia Porter and her older brother Max grew up in the small town of Cotopaxi, Colorado. Even though they fought like all siblings do, they were best friends and shared many common interests, which created a strong bond between them. As the years went by and they entered adulthood, Max decided it was time for him to leave Colorado behind and ventured to California to start his own business. Leia stayed behind and enrolled in college just over an hour away from home to study massage therapy. The two kept in regular contact, texting and calling each other every day. During this time, Leia met Jesse Mine and the two entered a relationship. Things started to go downhill quickly, with Jesse introducing her to heroin and then ultimately leaving her behind at a motel outside of Denver when he decided he needed to be with family on the East Coast to get clean. Distraught and with nowhere to go, Leia reached out to friends on Facebook looking for somewhere to stay for the night. On June 3, 2014, 19-year-old Leia accepted an invitation from former high school classmate Christopher Wade and headed to Westminster, Colorado. The next morning, Max was trying to contact his sister to no avail. After not hearing from her the day before and getting no response, he called Jesse to ask where Leia was. Jesse hadn't heard from her since he left the hotel and assumed she was hurt and upset with him when she didn't take his calls. Learning that she didn't respond to her brother either led them to both believe something had happened to Leia. In the following days, Max returned to Colorado to find his sister. While going over Leia's phone records, their mother noticed a number she didn't recognize show up repeatedly, leading to her daughter's disappearance. Upon calling the number, she discovered it belonged to Christopher Wade, and he informed her that he had not seen her since the night of the 2nd, when she'd taken a phone call at his apartment and then stormed out. Right away, Max knew that there was more to the story than Christopher was letting on. He started to befriend Christopher, building a level of trust, and then used that trust to his advantage. Setting up a meeting with Christopher at a local park, Max and one of his friends started an audio recording on a cell phone to document everything that was said. After Christopher used tarot cards to get answers about Leia's disappearance, Max had had enough. He demanded that Christopher tell him where his sister was, and shockingly, that's exactly what Christopher did. He claimed Leia attacked him with a knife after they spent time together in his bedroom, and that in self-defense, he accidentally choked her to death trying to subdue her. He then said that he wrapped her in a blanket and garbage bags, put her in a duffel bag, and disposed of her in a dumpster. Max lunged at Christopher at this point, and his friend said that he let him get a couple of good hits in before pulling him off and calling 911. Christopher confessed again to the 911 operator, and a third time to investigators. Leia's cell phone and clothing were found at the landfill associated with the dumpster Christopher claims to have discarded her in, but her body was never located. He was found guilty of second-degree murder and is serving 48 years as a sentence. Max continues to fight for his sister and says he'll never give up upon bringing her home so he and his mother can lay her to rest. Number 2. On June 7, 1998, Judy Johnson and her 6-year-old granddaughter were attacked by an intruder in Judy's Barberton, Ohio home. Judy was stabbed and strangled to death. Her granddaughter, who survived her injuries and regained consciousness the next morning, frantically called a family friend to come get her, explaining what had happened in a voicemail. She then ran to the neighbor's house for help. Tanya Brissell, Judy's neighbor, opened the door to the 6-year-old and then told her to wait outside for 45 minutes while she contacted her mother. During interviews, Judy's granddaughter stated that the man responsible for her grandmother's murder looked like her uncle Clarence. Clarence Elkins was a steel plant worker from Barberton. He married Judy's daughter Melinda in 1981, and they were all around a happy family. He was shocked when he was confronted at his home regarding the murder and adamantly denied any involvement. Police felt the eyewitness statement from the 6-year-old niece was enough to arrest him, even though he had a strong alibi for the entire evening and there was no physical evidence. Melinda knew there was no way her husband was responsible for her mother's murder, and desperate to get him out of prison, she set out on a mission to prove it. She compiled a list of 12 suspects on her own, inserting herself into their lives to collect DNA from them, which she kept in her freezer. Over the course of 6 years, she preserved bottles, cigarette butts, and hair from men that she felt could be the killer. Realizing that she needed a way to get the DNA tested, she contacted private investigator Martin Yant. Yant requested she reconnect with her sister and niece and talk to them about her concerns with the case. Having been estranged since the murder, Melinda was surprised when her niece said to her that she believed she had named the wrong man. She told Melinda that she'd only seen his face in the dark and that she didn't believe the eye color of the killer matched her uncle's. In 2002, a motion for a new trial was presented to the court, but it was denied because the prosecutors felt that Melinda had coerced her niece into saying she falsely identified. A few days later, Melinda picked up a copy of her local newspaper to see the face of Tanya Brissell, Judy's old neighbor, on the front page. Her and her partner were just arrested for abuse that had been happening in their home. Melinda claims that she knew that instant that man was responsible for her mother's death, and that she wasn't going to let him get away with it. Melinda discovered that Mann was an inmate at the same prison as her husband. While visiting, she convinced Clarence to collect DNA from Mann so that she could get it tested in Judy's case. In the following days, Clarence conversed with Mann on a few occasions, and when Clarence watched him put out a cigarette in the yard, he took the opportunity to collect it. He wrapped it in paper between the pages on his Bible for 2 weeks when he was able to get it to his lawyer. Mann's DNA was a perfect match to the DNA left at the scene. On December 15, 2005, prosecutors dropped all charges against Clarence Elkins after serving 6.5 years for a crime he didn't commit. He sued the state of Ohio and won a settlement for $1 million. The Barberton Police Department was also held responsible for their mistakes in the case, and Clarence was awarded another $5.25 million settlement. Mann took a plea deal in 2008 and was sentenced to 55 years for the murder of Judy Johnson. Number 1. Samantha Bottle was just 18 in March of 2005 when she left her home in Palmer, Alaska, to start a new job with a magazine subscription service in California. She met and formed a relationship with another member of her team, Chris, while selling magazines. After a few months, the two decided to leave the crew and go to his parents' house in Claremont, only to find themselves regretting their decision and heading back. While traveling back to their group near Montclair, California, they met 2 young men who said they were part of a magazine subscription crew and were looking to recruit more people. After discussing some details, Samantha and Chris decided to join them at a nearby hotel to wait for other members and start selling for them the following day. When a few of them decided to go see a movie, Samantha accepted the invitation and went to the theater about a mile away from the hotel. She didn't return, however, and when Chris asked where she was, they said that she had stormed out of the theater crying halfway through the movie. Chris walked to the theater in search of his girlfriend, but he couldn't locate her. He called her mom in Alaska, and she told him Samantha has run off before, and she may have just decided she wanted something else for her life. Chris was upset and worried, but decided to leave with the crew for Phoenix, Arizona a week later. On September 5th, the same day that Samantha disappeared, motorists traveling on Interstate 10 reported a young woman running in the middle of the interstate in Montclair. She'd been struck by at least 2 vehicles and was deceased upon the officer's arrival to the scene. She had no identification and was entered into the system as Jane Doe 17. Samantha's mother grew worried when she hadn't heard from her daughter after talking to Chris and tried to report her missing in Alaska, but was unable to do so because of her age. She contacted several police stations in California, trying to file a report, but was told without a last known address in the area she couldn't. In February of 2006, Samantha's luggage was found abandoned in an airport in South Carolina. When her mother received the suitcases weeks later, she found only 1 sweater and 1 sock belonging to her daughter. The rest of its contents were later determined to belong to Chris, who says that the suitcase was stolen somewhere between Phoenix and New Mexico. At this point, Alaska agreed to file Samantha as a missing person, and they created her report. Desperate to find her daughter and fearing the worst when Samantha didn't call over the holidays, her mother began scoring the Doe network looking for a sketch that may resemble Samantha. She finally came across an artist rendering of a young female found in Montclair, California, the same day that Samantha disappeared. Although the shoe size was wrong and the girl in the sketch had straight hair opposed to Samantha's curls, she was certain this was her daughter. She called the coroner's office in San Bernardino County, inquiring about Jane Doe 17. They requested dental records and fingerprints, as the missing persons report filed for Samantha in Alaska stated that these details were unavailable. Frustrated, Samantha's mother got the dental records herself from the family dentist and sent them to the coroner. By the following day, it was confirmed that Jane Doe 17 was in fact Samantha. San Bernardino was grateful for Samantha's mother and all of the effort she put into searching for her daughter. Because the date listed as last seen was entered as March 6, 2006 on Samantha's missing persons report, her file would have never been linked to Jane Doe 17, who was found deceased 7 months prior to September 5, 2005. Alaskan authorities had put the date she was filed as missing in her report opposed to the date that she was last seen, and this automatically ruled Samantha out when searching for her identity. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. If you loved it, maybe consider subscribing and clicking that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.